Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the City of Muskegon City Commission work session for Monday, November 8th, 2021. First item up for discussion, solid waste ordinance amendment.
Leanne. Everything is Leanne.
Everything's Leanne.
Oh, me.
Good evening. This is Mike Self.
Hello, how you doing?
This is Ruby.
Good to see you all. Happy Monday. So, you have seen this a couple of times already, and after the conversation that we had the last time we all discussed it, I made a change to the ordinance proposal. And so what I did is, you'll see, I just removed the 10 feet requirement. So what we're doing is we're saying that when your bin is now not out at the curb for collection, it needs to be behind the front face of your house, but there's no distance requirement. And then if you can't do that, then we're asking that you screen it, and we will be reasonable about what a screening looks like. I think I've talked to a couple of you so far about the idea of planting a bush or something, and you've heard about our front yard beautification program that we piloted this year, so that's something that could be done through that program or other means. We can certainly look at other things too. And I just want to stress that what we're trying to do here is fit what works for the majority of the people. We know that there will be instances where this is a hardship for somebody, and because of the design of their house or their ability or whatever, and we will be happy to work with people on a case-by-case basis. This time too, I also included some research that I did on some of our neighboring cities and what they require, so that you could see what's happening around us.
Any questions for Ms. Meixel on this item 1? And this will give us additional time for digestion before it comes back before us for a final decision.
It is on your agenda for tomorrow.
It is.
Yep.
One extra day. Well, yeah, of course it is. Yeah, thank you. Item D.
Right. If there's something else you want me to change, happy to hear it.
Sounds like a good idea.
Anything additionally? Commissioner Emery?
No, just thank you for looking at surrounding cities and what they do. So thank you for
You're
that.
quite welcome.
Yeah. Commissioner German, anything on item 1?
No.
Okay.
The big change is we just took away the 10 foot behind the front of the house. So it's behind the front of the house, but not 10 feet anymore.
Okay.
Or screened.
Take that. Commissioner Johnson, anything?
Thank you for providing additional context and looking at how other municipalities are dealing with that. I know when we've talked recently that we're not out to be, overly burdensome or problematic with this. And that for those people that cannot, because of whatever reasons, the way their property is configured, the house is configured, cannot comply with that, we'll work with them on reasonable accommodations. And if it is a matter of screening, then we'll try to connect them with resources or partners to assist there. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. And this will be on tomorrow under consent. Number 2, utility connection fee proposal.
Right.
You're
So
back with us?
I'm back. Here I am. Jake might end up helping me out here. There he is. So the Tax Incentive Committee continues to meet and look at other incentives that we offer. And so over the past few months, we've been talking about utility connection fees. And so we've got this proposal for you. It follows a similar pattern as our previous incentives. And so, again, what we're doing is we developed some cognates that were based on what we understand as the goals of the City Commission. And different points are awarded for each of those, depending on how well we think that meets the city's goals. And then what we decided to do is just base it on a percentage. And so 10 points would give you a 100% waiver, 8 points would give you an 80% waiver, and so forth. So I'm happy to talk further about the cognates that we put together if you want some more explanation on those or have questions. And again, this is just a proposal, and so we'll get input from you, and then the committee will meet again, and we'll develop an actual policy, a questionnaire that goes along with that, so that the developers would fill that out, and then that would give us the information we need to be able to score it. And again, the committee would meet for each development, score it, and then bring it to this body and give you a recommendation and let you determine the final outcome.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Muskegon.
So would this work for just an individual house and like for just one? I read some of these, some of them where there's, if the prime developer is a city residence, I mean, what does prime developer mean in that case? Like if you're building a house to rent out to somebody, are you a developer? Just one house?
I guess I'll speak for the committee, even though not all of them are here. I would say that we would certainly consider anybody who wanted to build a house on a vacant lot.
And what if it was a house that you were going to live in?
I would be open to that.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a picture for how, how it's used now versus how it would change. And if this is going to be out there, then I think, people would pay attention or, be aware of it. So, I mean, at that point, is it going to be is it every new building permit or, and then do we really need a system, do we need to approve these or do we just, is it just kind of go with your permit?
Well, I mean, I think it still should go through a process, and what we've got proposed here may or may not, I mean, some of you may agree with these points and some of you may not, may want us to change them. So, if somebody just wanted to build a home, the only one that they're likely to be eligible for on their own is being a city resident.
Yeah.
So that gives them, a potential of 5 points. But certainly if, they're doing something different, then they could be eligible for more.
Make sure that it wasn't just for a city resident building their house. We could just make that have to have more than 1 unit, 2 units, or 3 units. Mm-hmm. And then if it is a city resident building their own house, it wouldn't be at least the only thing they were building.
I mean, like I said, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I'm just thinking this might be quite different than how it is now, where, it seems like we're going to a system where when you get a building permit, you get figure out how much % off you get, which I'm not sure just if we're going to do that, let's do it being aware of that.
Sure.
Any other observations? At this point, again, this is under consideration. It's a process at this point. So, as the committee works through these things, please make contact and give input to the deputy city manager.
Yeah, I mean, my preference would be to get input from you tonight, because this is just a work session item. There's still work that the committee needs to do to put an actual policy together. So if there are cognates that, you're maybe uncomfortable with a portion of it or any of it, it'd be nice to know that now.
Sure.
Not that we can't take input into the future. I just want it to be on your minds.
But if people aren't coming up with something tonight, how about a drop dead date of what? For.
I guess if you could give us some information before the next commission meeting so that we might be able to bring you the policy at the December work session, that would be nice. We don't have to move that quickly, but, we've been talking about this for several months now, so.
Commissioner
Another question. I always love these. expansion of existing commercial or industrial business is 0 to 2 points. So maybe I missed it, but then how do you determine which it is?
1 point is awarded if you increase the value of $500 to $749,000 in taxable value or provide 10 additional
All right,
jobs.
there I see it.
Yeah,
Okay. So it's set. It's like determined. It's not just.
it is. And if you've got comments on those taxable values or number of jobs, I'm happy to have those.
Anything, Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, with regard to the residential mixed-use development serving income levels from 80 to 120% of the AMI, wondering why we provide a floor of 80% versus saying 120% and lower, or 100% lower. Like, why would we provide a floor? Because I know that we are one plank of our home infill and housing program is to provide housing for that missing middle, so to speak, or the more of that middle class or upper middle class, but we also are very keenly interested in supporting lower income and more affordable housing. So I'm wondering, what's the rationale for having a floor there versus just eliminating the floor and say anything below?
Yeah, I mean, this is fairly consistent with some of the other things that we've brought to you. We are seeing a greater need for that income range. They tend to get left out, right? Because the market rate tends to go a little bit higher than that. And then we've got subsidized housing, different programs and projects that come in for that. And so this seems to be a gap that we have.
And one other thing to keep in mind is anything below 80%, they're coming in on like a LIHTC project, and anything that we waive them is going to go probably into the bank account of the developer. It's not going to go into the building, right? Because the buildings, they're going to be paid development costs, right? So anything we save them, it'll go back to the developer. I mean, so the rent won't go up or down. The rents are set by MSHDA, right? The costs won't go up or down. They're set by MSHDA. The affordability won't go up or down. They're set by MSHDA. And so the thought is when those folks come in, like Berkshire is a good example, the one thing we do get from that, because we're not going to get taxes, we have to do a pilot in order to get it eligible for the LIHTC. The one thing we will get would be the water and sewer connection fees, at least pay for that particular service that they're going to get, knowing that for the next 30 years, we've committed to essentially having either little or no property taxes on those sites for the reason of affordability. But all the upfront development costs, anything we cut off of there, they save is going to go to the developer. It's not going to go to the people who live there.
And you don't, because most of those projects are funded through LIHTC, this additional incentive would not further incentive, basically, that.
No.
Okay.
I would not think so. For what I've seen from the LIHTC projects, it would not further incentive.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It wouldn't lower the rents anymore. They're going to charge the maximum rent they're allowed based on the income levels that they've agreed to with HUD well before they even get to this point with us. I know Jake raised his hand, but he might.
The only thing I was going to add. Good evening. The only thing I was going to add to further address that question is the committee. I just specifically recall this conversation because we had that same, talk. Why put a floor on it? Frank spoke to one point is that LIHTC developers are typically larger organizations that are well capitalized and also have full-time staff that all they do is work out pro formas on their projects and tend to be the larger multifamilies that we see. The folks that we're trying to incent to build that working wage housing, which is our biggest gap, it's our biggest gap in our housing spectrum, they aren't typically as well capitalized, and so this is an extra incentive that the committee thought would specifically target that housing need that we're really having a hard time cultivating. As an example, 1021 lofts, they do have some 80% AMI units, but they built 73 units in one development that are primarily below that, and our infill housing program is struggling to build that within 2 years. So that's the reasoning behind that, if I recall correctly from the committee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, commissioners? Okay. So we will, as any additional questions come up, we will get back with you ASAP prior to the next commission meeting.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes.
Would it be, I mean, see, we got a number of cognates here, and there's a lot of different ways that one could get 10 points to get the maximum benefit. Was there consideration of using this and our tax incentive program in general to incent, hiring local or sourcing your supplies locally, trying to have a workforce reflective of our community, those kind of things to, as another cognate that they could get points towards getting the maximum?
We didn't discuss that, but we certainly can.
Okay. I would welcome that if you'd be interested in having a discussion internally as to how we might be able to incorporate those cognates and give additional options to get to that maximum.
Are there other commissioners that are supportive of that?
This is for local, like a local content.
Local contracting?
Local contracting, supplying, supplies.
I would be in support of that.
The vice mayor is as well.
Okay.
I guess is it like is it the way I read it is there's these kinds of different projects. So it's residential, it's business. So you kind of come with what your project is. I guess I'm trying to understand like the local sourcing or employment. What would that be like? How would that be presented? Like, and you get a sewer reduction fee for. In addition, I guess I'm trying to understand how it would be received by the people who are initially proposing the. I'm assuming there's some sort of application or something like that, and then how that would work.
Right, we'll develop a questionnaire. And so I would think that for this idea, we would just have to ask them that, what percentage or some dollar amount that they're committing that would be local. So, that might come with us needing to follow up to be sure that they do it. So we'll have to give some consideration to that because that will be something that they'll have to commit to that we won't really be able to verify that it happened at time of application.
Yeah, I was just going to say it might be one of the things that maybe might have to be approved, as a refund or versus approval up front. So somebody could make the commitment, and if it pushes them to the next cognate or the next level, we would then have to award it after they've already paid it. They'll have to pay.
That makes sense.
We could always give them Ken probably would hate that. hate to have to track it, but we probably could give them a refund afterwards because it would be very hard to go back and ask them for it after the project's already done and the water's already turned on.
Oh, yeah. Good idea.
The treasurer's office has the ability to probably put a credit on their water bill if they are connected. Once they're connected to the city water, we could do that.
I think my recommendation committee might be figure out some dollar amounts total spent either on A, local contractors or B, local suppliers rather than a percentage of the project. Whether it's $100,000 or $500,000, whatever the number is, to get them the points that they need. Because if it's a really small project, you wouldn't have to spend very much money. It wouldn't be impactful to the local community. But if we set the dollar amounts, then that might be, you'd rather 1% of a $50 million project be spent here than 100% of a $10,000 project, right? Because it just is more money.
Commissioners think that sounds reasonable. I love the idea of giving them a credit afterward because then they kind of have to come back to us and show us that they did it.
And you could, if there's some concern there, rather than, let's say they get one cognate or 1 point for hiring local, and then they get 9 points elsewhere, so they do get 10 points to get the full waiver. As one possibility is you could give the waiver for the 9 points, and then the 1 point, that 10% only returns the credit after the fact.
That's what I was saying.
That's what. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
Not make them pay the whole amount. Okay, gotcha.
The difference.
Okay, perfect.
Because another one that
Yeah.
might need to be considered that way is the taxable value. I mean, we're all estimating what the taxable value might be, but I mean, just because they're putting $1 million into a building doesn't mean it's going to go up by $500,000 taxable value. It might go up $250,000.
Okay.
And just one last thing.
Yes.
I don't know. it's not 100% clear if like these are like mutually exclusive, like you only qualify for one, or maybe it should just be written then though that you can qualify for more than one, or you can fit in more than one class. Because
Okay.
it's not. I don't really see how it might just be clear.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
expect they would be able to combine whichever one.
Yeah, they'd be additive. That was what we discussed, that it would be additive.
Okay. Cumulative, additive. Okay.
Yeah. And you got to remember too, we're talking about waiving a fee. Leo or Ken can speak more to it, but waiving, for example, 100% of a fee for a large industrial user, that's a much bigger fee waiver than waiving a few residential connections, right? Residential connections, you know, $1,000 or $1,500. But some of these, like if I remember right, like a apartment building could be $30,000 fee. You know, they could be. You know, we're not necessarily saying we're not capping the dollar amount on here. We're saying a percentage. We're going to waive the fee. And I think, you know, I don't know if Ken knows what our largest connection fee probably is right now, but it's not a small one.
I think it's about 15.
Sometimes
Which is
it's
something-
dependent on how much work they need to do. So when you get to a certain level, I think it's kind of more of like a time and materials, right?
I think it's $40,000 for a 6-inch water. Also carry $40,000 for a 6-inch sewer. 8 inches and above is basically time and material, whatever the cost is.
So we could be waiving that. Like that's the point here. I want to say we could be putting a policy that could waive a $40,000 connection fee, not just a $1,800 connection fee which is mostly I think what we've talked about, how we've envisioned them when we talk about waiving a fee. We're talking about waiving a fee on Stephen Benedict's houses or whatever. It's significant, potentially could be significantly more on a high water user. I just want to make sure everybody understood that.
Because that would be very substantial.
Yeah. But if they're a high water user, we'll make up the $40,000, you know, relatively
Quickly.
And that could be kind of projected or calculated. Okay. Anything else, commissioners, before I move to item number 3?
Just a quick question. That sewer waiver fee would be basically on like industrial use and big projects like
a big one like that would be
buildings and stuff like that.
a big one like that. But I can imagine what the connection fee would be if somebody built I don't even know if anybody knows what was the connection fee at 1021 Jefferson. I bet you that was a pretty large connection fee. Probably nobody knows because I didn't ask them in advance, but I mean that was probably tens of thousands of dollars would be my guess. So it wouldn't just be industrial, but
Okay, right. Commercial building like
yeah,
High usage.
anything above a single family house is going to have a much larger water line going in,
Right.
and it'll cost more. So we'd be waiving more.
Okay. Right. Item number 3, inclusive zoning.
Okay, so you've heard me talk about this quite a number of times, and I tried to give you as much information as I could about the comments that we heard, and then provided you some staff input on those things that we heard. I did end up updating the frequently asked questions document because there were some themes that kind of ran through a lot of the comments. So I thought that might be helpful to have a more concise document for you. Happy to hear what other comments you have, what concerns you might have. I'm really looking for you to give us some direction on how we move forward with this. Do you support going forward with all 4 neighborhoods? Do you have some different ideas for how to go about this? Are there I know I did talk with Commissioner Johnson recently, and he had some questions and some ideas to do some things maybe a little bit differently that we could put into the code. Something that we discussed was, unless you want to bring this up, Commissioner Johnson. One of the things we discussed is perhaps we limit like a 4-unit and above, or the density that would come from a 4-unit or above, to areas that are within a certain distance of a commercial district, so that the density is more concentrated by the commercial corridors, not just anywhere in the neighborhood. That would be on top of the requirements that we already have with lot size and alley access and those kinds of things. So that was one idea. Something that the manager brought up was maybe we could even do a higher density multifamily overlay district where perhaps, and this kind of came from conversation from Commissioner Johnson about, it seems like we might have some basic level of approval for like duplexes and accessory dwelling units, and people seem to be a little bit more concerned about the higher density. So what if we approve duplexes and ADUs pretty much anywhere, but then we develop this overlay district that would provide, that we could determine specific places then where we would allow higher density. So, and then Commissioner Johnson asked quite a number of questions that were detailed about the code, which is why I asked Mr. Franzek to be here, because he can answer those better. But anyway, there are some things that, kind of help us move forward with this zoning so that we are providing more options for people, and then maybe working toward higher density in a slightly different way.
Okay. Anything, commissioners? Overall thoughts or feelings on moving forward with some type of inclusive zoning as opposed to strictly the exclusive with the single family? Commissioner?
Well, I mean, I think we should move away from just single family zoning. So, I don't know. We've had the proposal for a while, so I guess if we're gonna change it, I guess I'd just be interested to know what changes. But I definitely think we should do something.
I guess another point I'd like to make is that we are holding our master plan workshops. So the planning department has done quite a lot of work since we had our original master plan workshops and gathered input from the neighborhoods. And so we've got well-developed neighborhood plans to show to the neighborhoods and get additional feedback from them. And so this conversation is very timely. It makes sense to make a decision on how to move forward as we're finalizing the master plan.
Right. Vice Mayor?
What type of feedback did you get this last in the last 2 weeks?
The only thing that I added to the comments was what we heard at the last commission meeting. So I have heard nothing else since then. I will say that after that meeting, a couple of ladies from the Jackson Hill neighborhood asked me if I would come and present at their neighborhood. So I'm planning to do that a week from tomorrow.
From my perspective, I think it's essential that we do go with inclusive zoning. Its utilization is becoming more impactful in the communities that are beginning to adopt it nationwide to address housing shortage, affordability, and I think much of what we've heard in the past are legitimate concerns, but many of the comments were not necessarily part and parcel of what the zoning does or doesn't do. The zoning provides for more flexibility with the type of houses that you can put into a neighborhood as opposed to what's allowed now. Although we experience right now a lot of duplexes and multi-units in the form that maybe aren't necessarily the form we would like from the bad old days of houses getting cobbled up. This type of inclusive zoning does not provide for that. We're talking about new quality construction on mainly empty lots. I think a lot of municipalities are moving towards this type of model and have seen successes with it, as we have in the Nelson neighborhood. again, due to the fact of the housing shortage, the shortage of choices for houses at different price points for people at different income levels. And again, I think this would really help us in rebuilding many of our empty blocks and empty neighborhoods so that we can sustain those neighborhoods in the city as a whole. We've been discussing this in one way, shape, or form over the past several years and moving in this direction. And I would be very supportive with, even with some adjustments with, let's say, a special overlay district, that we begin encouraging new quality build, duplex accessory builds, much what exists today in one way, shape, or form. I know there's some concern about, rental units and renters, and does this mean more? Not necessarily. And even when we do have bad experiences with rental units, so many of those happen to be single family houses. So that becomes a matter of, enforcement and dealing with the landlord, whether it's a multi-unit or a single family unit. Because we can build single family and those can be rented out just like any other thing. But I think this gives us an opportunity to be able to invite in new quality, new construction and development that could benefit us. And again, it's not a given that these duplexes or accessory units would be built. I mean, if it's a buildable lot, chances are it's going to be a single family house. But this gives us the flexibility. This is a movement throughout the country and urban design. And I think we could draw many benefits from it. For the sake of people that need housing, and for the sake of rebuilding and strengthening our neighborhoods. That's my 2 cents. Commissioner Emery?
Thank you for that. I get caught in picturing our neighborhoods just with every empty lot that we have now has a duplex or a quad or something like that on it. And I can't get past that vision that I don't like. But this rezoning, it doesn't mean that an older home can be broken into one of our big, beautiful homes, can be broken into apartments, correct?
It's tough. It's possible, but you have to meet all the requirements of the code.
Okay.
And one of the things to keep in mind that the code requires any multifamily unit to have all the doors facing a street. And so if it doesn't already have doors facing the street, it might be tough to get it split.
Okay.
That's just one thing. But there are other things in the code that make it tough.
One thing that maybe if you look around, it might help you feel a little bit better about that, Commissioner Emery, is, we pretty much gave Dave Dusending, incentives and everything he needed to go into Nelson neighborhood, the one neighborhood that we did rezone this way, and to do to build multifamily, single family, whatever it took to make affordable housing. And if you look at what he built, 100% of the time for him, it made sense that they'd be single family houses. So some will come in there, but right now he did 25 straight single family, and I think the next 25 he's thinking single family. So even if the next 25, half of them end up being duplex and half are single family, you're still talking about 12 out of 75. So I would guess it'd be consistently more like that as we go into these other neighborhoods, that there will be some, but kind of like Leanne said, or the mayor said, the vast majority will continue to be a variation of a single family home, just because that's what most people around here, understand, and most builders understand.
Go ahead, Holly.
Yeah, I just got to get past that. I look at San Francisco and New York, where houses are literally built up on top of houses, and don't ever want our city to look like that.
Yeah, well, they need that density because, they don't have anywhere to expand out, right? We aren't in that same situation.
Yeah.
Basically, we're talking about our existing 50 by 100 lots, or maybe some of these other type of units make sense where we have those old 19th century lots of you know, but even there, you know, we become flexible because of this type of a district to allow them to go into a smaller lot than, you know, what maybe some of us have been used to. Because traditionally, that's how cities were built out in the 1800s.
Sure, my house burnt down. I wouldn't be able to build back on it according to our zoning rules. So,
But with these type of zonings, there's a whole heck of a lot more flexibility for that. Commissioner German.
Yes, just a couple questions and a recommendation. When we talk about inclusive zoning, and the word inclusive, meaning that we are including the citizens, I guess, in these decision-making processes. When we talk about coming in with this zoning, this type of zoning, the conditions, the what they want to see, and I don't see that. I see. Well, no. You tell me. Are there anyone in the community when you're sitting at the table and you're discussing this? Is the communities that you're talking about, like the Angel, McLaughlin, Nelson? I mean, not Nelson, but Jackson Hill. Is there anybody from that community sitting at the table helping drive this initiative, or just even being included with the decision-making process here?
This was a staff-initiated request.
Beg pardon?
It was a staff-initiated request. It came from staff. We're leading the
Okay, so
effort.
staff is driving this. Okay, so government is driving this. That's a concern. Okay, right there, because when you say inclusive now, and from Dr. Landsmark's, report, some of the cons that I would hear that I didn't hear in your presentation, which was a good presentation on the benefits of it. But I just think, and what I'm hearing from the community, it was somewhat deceptive because none of the cons are being presented, such as the gentrification. When they talk about being priced out, those things right there, talking with community community members, also the presidents of the neighborhoods association. I met with actually three, which was the Jackson Hill, Angel, and McLaughlin.
But Commissioner, we have been engaging. We've been engaging over a period of,
Okay, let me finish. Let me finish.
But I take issue with your contention that there hasn't been any.
No, I'm not saying that
That's
you
exactly,
have not.
That's
No,
exactly what you were saying.
No. That's not my intent. Okay, if you took it that way, that's not my intent.
Good.
What I'm saying is you're presenting this to the public, true enough, but the actual people sitting at the table, or is staff driven, and looking at other cities and comparing them, there were people from the community driving this initiative. The inclusiveness of saying, okay, you got someone from a neighborhood association telling you what they want. Yeah, you may get some input, but when it's said and done, it's okay, I'll give you an example. Carriage houses. I'm hearing that they don't want carriage houses in those neighborhoods. They feel that it don't fit. But when I hear your presentation, these are ideals from the government or your staff. So my question to them, the people that's heading this, a lot of them don't even live in that community. Or question from Dr. Landsmark, and this was stated also when he did a study. How many of you live in the neighborhood? Have you talked to people in the neighborhood? Or, how many black people have you talked to? So how do you know what's best for a neighborhood if they've lived there all these years, understand the culture, the history of it, and not really get the full impact, and then push this initiative as quickly as you're looking to do this? Now, you said, yeah, we went out and did some presentations, you did your due diligence, but sometimes it takes a little bit more time to get everyone aboard and to educate everyone. And meeting with these presidents the other week, they're asking to come in and do a presentation and give you their spiel on what they feel. And I think is worthy of the cause to hear from these neighborhood presidents and the community. And if the city will allow them time or put them on the agenda, I think we can get a better insight to really what's going on. Because from what I understand, they've done some research. They have some ideals that will, I think, enhance and make it conforming to what they want to see. Conditions and restrictions that they could put in a foreign-based code. I've heard that other foreign-based codes have had restrictions drawn into it, and we just had that discussion with the idea that Commissioner Johnson was talking about. So, I mean, I'm asking right now, is it any way that at our next meeting that we can allow this group to come in and do a presentation in front of the commission and get their ideas also and their input?
That's up to all of you to decide, not me.
Yeah, and I'm speaking to the commission, and I think that by being inclusive, hearing from these individuals, I think that should be on the agenda, and then allow them to do a maybe presentation. I don't know if it's 10, 15 minutes, but as a commissioner of that ward, I support that, and I just want to see how you guys feel, and I think that with the information that I've seen and heard, it will be something that probably would please both sides.
Commissioner Vincent Saving.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed this, and there's been, the last meeting I think we had was at Bethany Church a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what the appropriate way is to do it, but I guess if we want to have another meeting, I'd say it sounds like Leanne's going to Jackson Hill next week. I guess we just kind of need to figure it out because we've been meeting ad nauseum. I don't know if we're getting further ahead or further behind in terms of what we want. I think at some point we're just losing. And if we're just going to keep collecting bad feelings about the whole thing, then we should just quit while we're ahead. We have less bad feelings.
Well, to follow up on that, Commissioner, it's not bad feelings. You're talking about a community that has been pretty much left behind for years. No development, major development in that area. A racial divide, as stated in the report by Dr. Landsmark, that highway, that US 31. See, I'm from Michigan. Okay, I grew up here. Okay, I lived in Jackson Hill. Okay, I understand the culture of that. Now, you may not, but to these people over here, that's important. They have invested interest there. They sentimental values. So, I can understand where you're coming from, but I just don't think you understand the real culture and the historical value and what's happened to these people and how they were put in the spot and had to overcome these barriers to maintain their neighborhood with crime, drugs. Now that there's an opportunity to develop and to push this initiative as quickly, even though it could take another 18 months before a study to really, and I'm just, hypothetically saying that, but I'm just saying to get what a neighborhood really wants, because what you see that you think is worthy of this neighborhood, they don't see that. So I think it definitely warrants some input from these community leaders, from the neighborhood associations.
Deputy Manager and then Vice Mayor.
I want to try to address a couple of things that you said. The meeting that we had at Bethany Church, we invited all 4 neighborhoods affected to that meeting. And I don't know, I think I was standing up there for 2 hours answering questions. So yes, I was there to give a presentation, and I was there to hear what they had to say. And Mike and Jamie and I all took notes so that we captured the things that were said at that meeting. You brought up Dr. Landsmark. his report suggested that we go forward with zoning like this. He's worked with this kind of a thing, and he understands that this type of zoning is helpful to communities. It actually addresses the problem of gentrification. And we say that word a lot, and it sounds like a lot of the times when we're saying gentrification, we're really saying investment. So this type of zoning addresses gentrification because, well, for one thing, and we're unique in the city of Muskegon that we have so many vacant lots, we're not pushing anybody out. We're looking to develop on vacant land. At the same time, if you have exclusively single-family zoning, you are not providing options for people that need affordable places to stay. This type of zoning provides more options so that there is an ability to create something that is affordable for people. We've talked about people getting displaced because property values are raising. And, we've talked about the protections that we enjoy in Michigan from Proposal A. And so even if there is a bunch of development happening around you that's going to raise your property value, it isn't going to raise your taxes dramatically or quickly. There may still be upward pressure on rents. Landlords, we don't have control over what landlords charge for their apartments. So that just means that we as government have to continue to work hard to bring affordable housing like we did at 1021 Jefferson, like we did with Samaritas. So we're not going to stop doing those things. What we're finding, though, is that we have this gap where we have a bunch of single-family homes and we have things like Jefferson Towers that are huge high-rises. We don't have the middle, and that's all we're trying to do is put some zoning in so that we have options for people to build the middle. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to push anybody out. We're not trying to raise anybody's taxes. We're not trying to remove choice for people to do whatever they want to do on their own property. It's going to be up to the person that purchases the vacant lot to decide what to build there. The code gives them guidance for what they can and can't do, but it doesn't tell them what they have to do. It doesn't, the code isn't going to say, well, this lot would fit a duplex, so you have to build a duplex. No.
And
that's not the case.
Before you go, I have the vice mayor here.
Yes. And I agree with what you're saying. We need to build for all levels of income for people that don't want to own homes or can't own homes, that want to rent, or that's their only option. All renters are not terrible neighbors. All homeowners are not good neighbors. So it's a mix no matter what you get. It's a crapshoot. Who's going to move in next to you? And of course, nobody wants the nasty, the one with 4 or 5 dogs barking all day long, crap all over the yard. Nobody wants that in there next to them. I understand that. And I understand that there's meetings and that there is some type of idea or PowerPoint of what the neighborhood, I think it's Jackson Hill, what was it, Angel
McLaughlin.
and McLaughlin, that is that who had the meeting Sunday? Yeah, and so I understand that there is some type of PowerPoint or some type of presentation that they want to give. Is that correct?
Before I'm going to allow you to quickly speak.
Okay.
All right. No, because we can take your public comment after this. I'm sorry. We can take your comments at public comment after this presentation. Okay.
Okay. So, and if that's the case, then I think we should see it. We should listen to it. We should hear it. But I also think that after we do that, we do need to make a decision one way or the other what we're going to do.
Please.
I'm glad that the neighbors are meeting. I'm a little bit disappointed that no staff get invited. They certainly have every right to meet on their own, and I wouldn't discourage that. It's just that if they're at the point that they're developing a PowerPoint presentation, it would be nice for us to be able to have a conversation. Because, that's why we went to the neighborhoods, right? We wanted to have a conversation. Here's what we want to do. We want to know what you think about it. And
PowerPoint came before the presentation. You made it in your office. So it's not like you did it.
okay,
With us.
I'm going to address you guys. So I'm just saying that, we can get this stuff done better together. And so I guess I just encourage the neighbors to reach out to staff. We're here. Our job is to help and serve the people. So that's all I really wanted to say.
And really, it's a staff thing. I mean, the staff presents the code or the amendment ordinance to us. We don't, I don't think we're the best group up here to decide how to do 4 or 6 or have doors on the front or all, that's what the staff is for. So I would agree that that's where the most productive conversations are going to happen to bring something to the commission.
Commissioner Johnson, anything? Then Commissioner Emery.
Yeah. Where do I begin? I would be just jumping off the most recent conversation in terms of a neighborhood association or another presentation or input from the public and wanting to engage us. I welcome that. If they want to send it to us, by email, and we can individually review it and sit down with them, or if we want to facilitate a presentation to a work session or other meeting, I'm happy to do that. I'm all for the meaningful community engagement with our residents. I do wonder, though, because I know that the NIMS Neighborhood Association had reached out and wanted a sit down with staff on this, and NIMS was told, "We'll just show up to McLaughlin." And so I don't know.
That's not quite how I remember the conversation, but go ahead.
So, that would be helpful to have that individual sit down. I know when we discussed this, it was in the spring, maybe March, we'd encourage the engagement with each neighborhood. And so I think some in the neighborhood would welcome that, because there was a bit of confusion. Why was NIMS being added at this point to it? I was not aware of if there was a Sunday meeting. I wasn't invited to it either, so I wasn't aware of that meeting or what happened there, so I can't speak to what was discussed there. I'm very much interested in hearing that input, though. Let me say this. I support form-based code generally. I think that it's the right way to go in terms of zoning. It's not looking at just land use or separation of uses. It's looking at programming and land use in concert with form. So it's marrying of form and function, which I think is a perfect way to go, and seeing good results already with it. And so I support the general concept of form-based code going forward. The question is, what are the proper context areas for each portion of our city? And I'm not sold that the urban residential context area, as being presented right now, is the appropriate context area for all of our city, let alone starting out with all of NIMS, all of Jackson Hill, all of McLaughlin, all of Angel. And that's where I've talked to you previously about, would it be sensible to scale it back to duplexes in those areas and identifying whether the overlay, as the manager suggested, or creating a different context area for form-based code to apply to those commercial corridors or those other areas where it's more sensible to have the higher density, in which case I would also like to see the accessory commercial units as well, whether they are elsewhere. I know we talked about ACUs a little bit. I'd like us to see where the ACUs are appropriate, and whether it's that overlay district that we're talking about or that higher density residential. But I would like to see more of those ACUs being accommodated so we can support that neighborhood enterprise and that entrepreneurship within our communities. So I guess as it stands right now, of the proposed urban residential context area for the entirety of these 4 neighborhoods, or the replacement of the R1, R2, and R3 of those 4 neighborhoods, I could not support it as is right now. But what we're trying to accomplish with that is very important. We have a housing crisis in our community, and we're not alone. It's happening all across this country, but we are, and it's only going to get worse here in Muskegon. The whole country is facing it because of supply constraints and costs, and buildings are not keeping up with population growth. But we're going to see it here even worse, I believe, because we are becoming a more and more attractive place for people to relocate and to move to. And there's opportunities here. And so we need to get out ahead of it and help provide. Otherwise, if we were behind the curve, those costs are just going to go up regardless. The cost of buying a house, the cost of renting a house, they're all just going to go up regardless. And so we do need to get ahead of it. But we need to be doing it in concert with our neighbors and our community leaders as well. We are, Commissioner German touched on this, is that we're calling it inclusive zoning. Let's be, and as you mentioned, let's work to ensure that we're doing it in a collaborative way so that we are doing it better together. So I'm all for that. I'm curious though, the city manager mentioned that we haven't, while we've accommodated or allowed this higher density in Nelson neighborhood, we haven't been seeing these duplexes or triplexes or quadplexes being built. So I'm wondering what is the holdup there, because we've already done it and said we want to do it in other neighborhoods so that we can allow these type of housing. But what's holding that development up though in the Nelson neighborhood, and what more do we need to do to see some of those duplexes being built so we create a higher number of units available that still fit within the form of the neighborhood? And so I'm curious about that, why we haven't been seeing that already. The other thing is, when we talked about the Dr. Landsmark, when he spoke to us, his study did include references to displacement policies or anti-displacement policies. I know there were a couple of things that we couldn't do that he referenced because state law doesn't allow it. But I'm wondering, has staff explored any of his other suggestions or any other ideas outside of that, so that we can, because that's whether real or perceived, it is very much a concern of many people in our community, gentrification and displacement. And so anything we can do to alleviate those concerns would be helpful and go a long way for us to be able to move forward in greater unison and unity. So said a lot. I should have broken that up. Sorry if I overwhelmed you there.
That's okay. So I guess I would like to address the communication with the NIMS neighborhood. So I sent an email out to all 4 neighborhood presidents offering to meet. And when NIMS got back to me, they said that it kind of went back and forth a little bit, but they said that they just would want their board members to meet. And I said that would be fine. And I said, hey, I already have a plan and these 2 neighborhoods are coming together. It would be great if you guys could come to that. If not, okay. And they didn't come. I never heard anything back about, we'd really like you to come meet with us. So, and if they would still want me to come talk with them, I'm happy to come talk with them.
Okay.
As far as why the higher density isn't getting built in Nelson, the place that we really wanted to do that was on Webster. And the neighbors in that area were really not supportive of it. And so the builder ended up doing single family homes. As far as I understand, the development proposal for the old farmers market site still includes duplexes. We have certainly been able to do it on our own. We've got the row houses that are on Monroe. So, and then if you look at even the last item on the agenda, we're trying to incentivize the building of missing middle houses in some of our incentives. So, we can do that. If we can certainly explore other ideas for how we can encourage the density to be built. As far as the anti-displacement policies, I have not personally done any additional research yet. So that's something that we can certainly review.
So
Was there
moving
anything I
forward,
missed? Sorry.
we're probably in another holding pattern from where things are right now.
Well, I guess I'm,
You know,
if everybody isn't comfortable with urban residential as it's currently described, tell me what you are comfortable with.
and
We can
there's the
develop-
kicker, before we kick staff back and say, you know, we're not comfortable right now, go figure something out. You know, we have to be very concise. And if it means a meeting with NIMS, I would suggest that anybody with the PowerPoint meets with staff first before it, you know, comes back to, you know, us, due to the fact that this is where, you know, the sausage is made at the staff and neighbor, you know, level. I think that's essential, because, you know, for us to try to do sausage work up here on the dais beforehand, you know, isn't very effective. But I think we have to be
Making sausage.
coming up with the plan, making sausage.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
it necessarily, you know, has to be the, you know, neighborhood interest with the staff, because of the expertise and the expertise of the neighbors, you know, living where they're at. You know, I think that's the best first, you know, place for having the discussions, or continuing the discussions that have been ongoing. But I think we have to be very, very specific, so that staff has, you know, direction, instead of saying, you know, there's not a level of comfort here, go figure it out. They can't figure it out unless, you know, we've really pinpointed or given them the direction that we, you know, want them to go into. Commissioner Chairman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As to your point on some of the things with the zoning, and I agree with Dr. Lance Smart's recommendations, but you know, there's so many other benefits out there that's not being discussed. And from the presentation in these meetings, we're hearing that, okay, we can have this, and if you want this, but what is it? A lot of people in the community don't really know what resources or benefits are available to them. And that's part of the reason why these neighborhood associations spoke with me, and I sat down and I listened to them and their concerns. And I think they best know their neighborhood because they've lived there, own property there, and have an invested interest there. To not allow them to speak at a public meeting, I think, is a disservice to them. And it just seems like, again, going through the process, and I know you're working hard and staff is working hard. I take nothing away from staff. You know, I respect that to the fullest. But I also respect the citizens here and the taxpayers, that they should have an option to speak and present their thoughts and concerns and what they see that they want for their community as well. And that's why I asked that at the next meeting, I guess it's what, the 23rd, to allow them publicly to present their presentation to the commission and let it be public. This is due to Open Meetings Act. I think it's the right thing to do. So
Something like that would probably be better at a work session than at a regular commission meeting.
well, Mayor, we don't tell other people that, and when they come in and do proposals and want to present, we don't tell them that. Now,
Actually, we do, because the work session is probably the most appropriate place that gives us more time, where we're not having to deal with the regular business, and we can, you know, do more heavy lifting and more discussion. But the contention that people haven't been able to speak, you know, to this issue, I think that's way off base, due to the fact that whenever form-based code or urban context or anything else, whether it's been at the planning level, at this level, presentations that were well attended after the Dr. Landsmark's study was presented. People were inputting. We were listening, and everybody, people have had an opportunity. People have been invited, and I think it's I really take issue due to the fact that any contention that have been attempting to hide anything and have not invited people to speak, is just not true.
Well, I never said anything about hiding anything, so let's get that on the record.
But as far as the contention,
let me go ahead and finish.
I will give you the floor in just a minute.
Okay, but I was speaking.
But your contention, the thing is that the more you talk, the more it sounds like we've been, shutting people out, and that is just not the case.
That's your perception, Mayor, and that was never the case.
But when you have a packed house, when you have people coming front, when you got people coming, to the meetings, whether it's at the church or at Smith Ryerson, and staff who is busting hump, and we've entered into, a really great project with the Mayor's Institute of City Design, and you keep on bringing up Dr. Landsmark, but Dr. Landsmark is clearly affirming some of the directions we want to go to for the sake of the neighborhood, which is economic redevelopment, which is value building within the neighborhood, and his contention that in order to a tool to help with displacement and whatnot, includes inclusive zoning as a potential tool along with others. But you keep on digging this hole, which is painting us as we're not listening to people and we haven't given them the opportunity. Where month after month and year after year, we have entered into the discussion with people, invited them in at multiple levels, not just here at this dais, but at planning, at neighborhood association meetings. The invitations have been out. People, we've heard from these, some of the folks here tonight, and many, many more. But I sometimes when you're presenting, Commissioner, it just seems to do a disservice to our intention, to the hard work of the staff, and the reality that nobody has been shut out, and the invitations have been sent out, and people have taken those invitations, and we have been having the discussions.
Now, may I continue?
You may.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, Mayor, I never intended or said anything that discredits staff or Ms. Maiso. And if you was listening, I commended her for her hard work and her staff.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
So
now can I have the floor, Mayor? You gave me the floor. Please let me speak. Okay, because I'm not going to allow you to sit up here and discredit me now. Okay, because that was not the intent. I respect the staff, but what I'm saying is when I heard from the community to give them the option to speak, that's all I was asking. We've heard staff at every meeting. I've been to most of them. There may have been some input from the community, but now you have 3 neighborhood associations that have collectively came together who feel that they have something valuable to add. What's wrong with that?
Nothing at all.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. There's nothing to discredit anybody or the hard work that staff is doing, and that's never my intent. Okay, my job as a commissioner is to lead. Represent the community, work in the best interest of the government, and that's what I've done for the last years that I've been on here. Now, if I disagree with something or see something different, okay, I'm going to say something. So we all have opinions. So nothing that staff, you, or anybody else up here. But I just want to make sure that everyone has a fair opportunity to give their input, and maybe you may see something or hear something that you didn't hear before. That's all I'm saying.
Good. I'm all for it.
And just to follow up, when you said a work session, is that something that we can put on the agenda for before this is finalized for them to speak?
Yes.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm curious, you did say that you heard some additional comments. Are they different from what we've received so far? You know, I'm curious to know what the concerns are. You mentioned something earlier about that they don't really like accessory dwelling units, and I think you just said they don't fit in the neighborhood.
You know, and I think it would be best for them to go ahead and
Okay.
present that, and you hear from the community, because I'm the commissioner. Okay, the voice comes from the public, and that's what I want the people to listen to, the commission to listen to the public. You know, this is not my agenda. You know, I represent that ward, but you know, I also represent the public, and I prefer the public to speak.
We can, you know, we're more than happy to go and, you know, seek out and invite in the additional, you know, input. Definitely, Commissioner.
It just sounds like this is a long process, so I think we should kind of wrap it up for the night, because we've talked about urban residential probably enough times, and I don't think we're going to get any further besides deciding whatever the next step is, and I'm sure that won't be the last step either, but I think we need to move forward.
But right now, you know, as far as some reasonable level of direction as far as the additional invite for input, any specificity you need from commission before we move forward.
Well, I guess I'm curious how the rest of you feel about duplexes or 2 units per property being fairly acceptable anywhere in the neighborhoods, and then looking at higher levels of density in a different way. One of the things that I thought could be helpful to you, I'm not sure if it's been provided in the past, is being able to show on a map in these 4 neighborhoods where the 4 units would even be eligible. I feel like we've put together something similar to that before. Yeah, maybe if you don't mind having Mike come up.
Yeah, I like the idea, kind of like an overlay district or a boundary from commercial corridors. I think that's really important moving forward in other neighborhoods. I think the reason we picked these 4 or 5 additional initial neighborhoods is because we're already seeing that type of development within it, and there are already regulations about where they can go. So it's already similar to an overlay district. So you look at NIMS, we were just studying this upstairs. There are a lot of rentals and there are a lot of duplexes, but there's not a lot of properties over 40, 45 feet wide. So you're really not going to be able to have your small multiplexes in that neighborhood other than a few anomalies. So it's kind of already written into it that way as an overlay district. It's just not called that. I think when we look at some of our outer neighborhoods like Oakview and Sheldon Park, when we're looking at our master plan, and this is a great time to discuss this next week at our planning workshops, you really start to see areas where it's close to commercial or public transit, where middle of the neighborhood may be mostly single family owner occupied, and maybe that's kind of how we want to steer those neighborhoods. These initial 4 or 5 neighborhoods really already have a concentration of at least duplexes within the core of the neighborhood. Now Nelson, I think out of the 950 some houses they have, about 20% of them are already missing middle, or duplexes, all multiplexes. So I think those maps really do help. I think we really showed that in Angel last year, where I believe it's the south part of the neighborhood, if I'm not mistaken, is where the alleys are, and that's the only area you could really have small multiplexes. The northern part of the neighborhood not yet affected. So code already has a lot of things written into it that would make it kind of seem like an overlay. So whatever other protections we want to put on, we can write. I think we did a really good job listening to the neighbors when we first implemented this, the whole neighborhood in Nelson. There was concerns about 6 units being too large, so we cut those down to 4 units, and we added the alley stipulation. So, you know, we are listening. We want to be able to write things into the code. We've had a lot of public hearings and we've gone to a lot of meetings. Staff's probably just a little caught off guard about the maybe a desire not to have carriage houses into Jackson Hill. So we haven't talked to anybody or heard that as something. I kind of thought we had Jackson Hill on our side by the time we brought this back. But if that's something that they really don't want, we could craft the code to say it's still urban residential, but you can't have carriage houses in Jackson Hill. You can get as specific as you want, and whatever we can think up and decide that we want to go, we can write that into the code. So I don't think we're too far off here. I think with some more information at these charrettes workshops next week, we'll have some of that stuff available and discuss weeks we want to go forward with there as well.
And that's why I think it's very important that any of the interested parties from any of the neighborhood speak immediately to the staff involved in the process, due to the fact that then they're hearing it first person as opposed to second or third, and it's something we haven't heard before here on the dais, and as evidenced here, perhaps something that hasn't been heard from staff after they have spoken at past meetings. But it's a process. Everybody just has to be willing to, get together and be open. And here are the folks right here that need to hear all the questions and all the concerns. And we'll continue to bend over backwards to make sure that people are heard. Because that's what we've been doing, and we will continue to do so that we can get it right. Commissioners, anything else for staff at this point, as far as directing for additional information as we attempt to ferret out where we possibly can go with inclusive zoning? Mr. Manager,
I'll just make one last pitch. It's not to include it or not include it or anything like that, but it's really to say we got a pretty big year coming up, because we know that with the infrastructure bill rolling out and potentially the social bill rolling out and our ARPA stuff going there, our planning department is going to be taxed, because I'm going to push them to go after the different funding sources and all those things that are available to us. And if we're going to have them spending a significant amount of time on this and have it not go anywhere, there's a chance we're going to not be able to put all the resources. There's 4 people, I think, in the planning department. Not be able to put all the resources we need into those other things. So just let's think about that. So every time we add 2 more weeks onto this process, and another month and 3 more meetings, those are good because they get more input. But if we really think we're going uphill battle and there's not a lot of convincing we can do to you, or not a lot of convincing we can do to other folks, tell us now, because there are some really important, legitimate things that either we're going to be able to spend time on and make impactful to this community, or potentially not spend time on, and we wouldn't know the difference. We wouldn't miss them because we would never know that we had the opportunity for them. But we're just going to be coming up on that. But and you see that happening now. These things are going to start becoming available. There's a potential that they're going to be very staff labor intense, and we're going to have to make decisions on how we spend, how we allocate what little bit of time we have. So while I am, for a lot of reasons, a proponent of form-based code, I don't want to waste a lot of time on it if we really think that it's not going to get to the finish line. As much as I care about it, as much as I know these guys care about it, I'd hate to push that stone up the hill, not get that to the finish line, and then turn around and find out that maybe there could have been some significant things that we also missed out on that are unrelated to form-based code, because we put all of our effort into this, and then we miss out on going after all this. For example, it sounds like there's going to be a monumental investment in affordable housing, which is what we're saying we want to do. But if we're spending our time on this, and then we miss out on putting our effort into grabbing a hold of some of that affordable housing investment that's coming out from the federal government, we'll actually put ourselves in a worse position coming out of 2022 or 2023. So just keep that in mind. And normally I don't say that. We're happy to do whatever you want us to do, but this is just an important time for us to spend our human capital very wisely in the time. There's only so many hours in a day for these folks, and like if I can have Jamie working on something that's more impactful and more likely to get done, I'd rather have him doing that. The same thing with Mike and Leanne and
So,
Pete.
so and that was what I was going to wrap up with is, it's either, time to fish or cut bait, and for very many of those reasons. And, because either it's acceptable by us or not in its current form, there's, much and good beneficial, work to do, but, at this juncture, those additional outreaches, and then coming back at work session in December, and I think we should all be charged with, either we're ready to move forward or put it on the back burner. Commissioner German?
Yes. What timeline are we looking at? I mean, we've had all these meetings. And there's still a lot of questions that's not answered. There's not a lot of consensus with everyone in the neighborhoods. I'm just curious to, find out, what timeline are we looking at? And also, just a question also, with the study for Dr. Landsmark, did we pay for that or?
No, that was a freebie.
That was free. Okay.
And I'm a member, and that as an alumni, we benefited from that.
So the timeline really is tied to the master plan. So if we are, whichever direction we choose, that will impact what goes into the master plan. And so they're really tied together. It's not that we couldn't come back and change it, but we're doing a really huge overhaul to the master plan, and it would be labor intensive for staff to go back and make this change later.
Okay, so we're looking at that 6 months from now, or?
Well, it's fairly substantially complete, which is why we're going to the neighborhoods next week. And so, I don't know, Mike, do you have a specific time that it needs to be done?
Well, like you said, we're wrapping up the neighborhood section of the plan, so it would be
Good, we want to have everybody's comments after these meetings next week. Probably be receiving written comments from have to be able to have staff really be able to wrap that section of the plan up by the end of December, January, just so we can start moving ahead on different sections of the plan.
And for a refresher, Mike, when did you begin engaging the neighborhood specifically about the master plan? It's pre-COVID, am I correct?
Yeah, so the COVID really kind of cut into our master plan work. About 18 months. Staffing issues, so we've been talking about it since before.
Thank you. And I kind of feel that's probably why a lot of the residents don't know, due to the pandemic and not being able to have access or be able to be present.
Well, we did start the meetings before that, so we met with all the neighborhood associations with at least twice, sometimes 3 or 4 times. So whether that was talking about master plan issues or something in particular, having these next rounds. So we've gotten a lot of feedback, and it seems to still be trickling in, which is fine. We've had the public hearings, but nothing's been voted on yet. So there's still groups out there wanting to meet, talk through issues. That's completely fine. But when staff doesn't know about it, we're fighting against each other.
Bringing us to the commission, to today to represent those 3 neighborhoods, that they have an invested interest that they would like to share, not only the commission, but with the public as well.
I'd be excited to listen to the presentation and see what it's in, and I would venture that we're probably not that far off on our goals.
And then
The expected outcomes to reach those goals would be, I think, a lot more common ground.
Mike, we have 3 sessions next week on the master plan. Can you give folks those dates? We have them.
It's the 16th, 17th, and the 18th. 16th is at the Assembly of God, side of the city. 17th is at Smith Ryerson Park, and Graff Park is on the 8th. And we can talk about any neighborhood at any of them.
Right.
You don't have to be from a certain neighborhood to go. There's things that will impact everybody in every neighborhood. So we encourage everyone to go to everyone, but they're broken down into the feature neighborhoods for that night.
And then one last pitch, I just want to say, if we really think that we have to get consensus, I would just, rather than saying I think it's impractical to get consensus from everybody on something like this, but just know there's 40,000 people that live in the city. There's thousands potentially in each neighborhood. It'll be difficult to come in and come up with any plan that will get the consensus of everybody. So there will be, at some point, we'll have to decide whether it's single family or multifamily or form-based code or all the different types of form-based code that we could think of. The likelihood that we're going to be able to lay any plan out there, regardless of what we talk about, how many times we talk about it, where everybody shakes their head in approval, that's going to be difficult to do that. So at some point we're going to have to decide, based on the most consensus that we can get, knowing that it'll be pretty hard to get. Hey, you know how hard it is to get consensus from 7 people? We've seen that, how hard it potentially can be to get consensus from 15 or 16 neighborhoods, and then block by block within a neighborhood and all those things. It's just be difficult. So,
yeah. Okay. Anything before we go to public comment? I'm looking forward to the public meetings next week, and that has been promoted on social media and through other means as well.
I have one thing before we go to public comment. Are there any questions that jumped out at you on the regular agenda? And the only reason I asked that is I got my booster shot today, and if I wake up tomorrow morning, there's, I'd like to answer them today while I'm of sound mind and body. Otherwise, just in case it doesn't go very well, it's getting sore. But just in case I wake up sick or for some reason can't make it here tomorrow, or text them to me or get them to me as soon as before tomorrow morning as possible. Just like I said, just in case.
By 1:35 a.m. This coming morning.
Yeah, if I'm up with the chills, I might as well be on the email.
Unless anybody has anything right now, or take a bit more. Okay. So then we'll go to public comment at this time. Members of the audience, our neighbors, are invited up at this time to make public comment. We just need your name and address, and you have up to 3 minutes of public comment. We do not debate or engage at this time. However, you can make contact with any one of us after the meeting, or as appropriate, we can refer you to the appropriate staff member. Sure, good to see you again.
All right, man. Thank you. Good to see you guys. My name is Calvin McLaurin, 223 Amity Avenue. I guess I have more questions. As far as, you don't have a localized website where we as community members can go in and see what you guys' plans are? Because I think the last time I was in this meeting, I asked for it, and it was never, I don't think it was ever given to me, and I haven't seen it up here where I can just, write it down and go home.
Sure. The presentation about the proposal for the neighborhood form-based code is on the website.
No, I mean the layout of the area, which is, like you're talking about high density areas. Where is that going to be? Low density areas. I mean, I'm hearing all the conversations.
Okay. Mike, is there anything specific like that available?
Yeah, our website has all of our codes on it, all of our plans. It can be pretty daunting to just go on there and try to surf through it, so we always recommend people call us. We can help guide you. All the maps show where all the high density, low density is, and the plans go over anticipated changes.
So, before you go tonight,
I'll get with Mike.
Get the contact information for planning, and then they'd be more than happy to.
I'll be more than happy to thumb through them.
Yeah.
And one other thing, I was one of those individuals who was not notified. All right, I've been living on Amity Street for over 20 years almost. I have yet to receive a letter. The only way I found out was from my brother 2 days before the first initial meeting you guys saw me in here. And if you notice, you haven't seen me miss one since. Now, if I would have known something like that, well, all of a sudden, now I'm taking interest. This is what I'm saying. You're saying everybody has been notified, but I don't think so.
No, I didn't say everybody was notified, but
No,
everybody.
no.
And we have to find, we continually have to find, better means to get the information out, because we're in a weird period. Once upon a time, people used to see it in their newspapers, and we all used to get one on the front stoop. Yeah. For all the miracle of this, we get less information out. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. So we have to continually, talk about and reinventing the wheel when it comes to, how can we make the biggest contact, with our neighbors, and we're trying to figure out. We certainly like to hear from, individuals that have ideas or haven't, been able to find the information. So.
Well, for me, I guess my biggest thing is knowing where this high density area is.
Yeah.
Okay, because I feel like I already live in a high density area, but it's only a few houses there, because every house except for Miss Brown and my next door neighbor are all 3 apartments.
Sure. I'll let you do it, but
with that
definitely
being
get
said,
the contact information from Mr. Franzik, and we'll be more than happy to, help direct you and walk you through the information. Okay.
Good deal.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission at this time?
Hello, my name is Maria McIntosh. I live at 644 Jackson. I just wanted to, I know you like to cap it at 3 minutes. However, I'm representing 3 neighborhoods, which should constitute as a group. So I'm asking for a little bit more time to say what it is that I need to say on behalf of our neighborhoods.
On behalf, then we'd be glad to allow you 10 minutes.
Well, won't be that long-winded. So first things first, I want to apologize if there's anybody who's feeling any kind of way for not being invited to the meeting that happened on Sunday. The reason why we reached out to our commissioner specifically is because we know for certain that he's an active part of our community. He looks out for our vested interest, and at this point, he's the person that we trust the most to deliver our concerns without any bias, any extra, things that would deter us from our having our concerns and our needs met. In regards to you, Mayor Garwin, I'm sorry, when you said that you suggested that we meet with the staff first, in regards to this, to that we say no, and the reason for that is because the staff seems pretty competent, and they seem like they're knowledgeable enough to have done a lot of this research themselves. They didn't necessarily they didn't put us at the table to come up with all of this information as to whether or not they what form they wanted to go with for our neighborhoods. We wasn't at the table when you were behind the scenes and you were doing your extra research. That wasn't something we weren't there. That was something, as the gentleman said, that was something that was done internal. That was a staff thing. So in regards to that, they had a lot of time to not only just focus on the pros of it, but look to us and know that we are people. We are not codes. Yes, your job is to talk about codes and standards and street whatever and setbacks and all that stuff. That's over my head, I get it. But we are people. And in these particular 3 areas, we are a people that are a concentration of a certain demographic that is not represented countywide, is not reflected countywide. Our percentages on African Americans and things like that and our concerns, that's higher in these areas. So in saying that we need to meet with them, that's something that they should have when they put this plan out there, when they thought about this, when they thought about it pre-COVID, when they came up with their master plan, when we didn't have a seat at the table. That's something that they should have considered. They should have considered us as people. Now, it's not our chance, it's not our time, late in the game to come to them and say, hey, please treat us as people. You should have done that initially. So with that being said, they also talked about, they had all these different sessions and all these different things. Like I said before, it was really biased. It was really one-sided. It talked about the pros. And I get it, if you want to push something through, that's what you're going to focus on, the pros. But considering that we are people, you have to focus on the whole picture because it affects us as a whole because we're people. We have our own culture. We have our own way of doing things. We should have had a seat at the table. I agree. I don't think that this should necessarily be strung along forever. When we met with Commissioner German, when we met with Commissioner German, we asked for an agenda item to be added so it could be voted on. So we'll know what our next steps are as well. So the agenda item that we wanted to ask to be added for the vote on the 23rd as well, in addition to what you all are proposing as far as your zoning, is that we have an additional 12 to 18 months at the minimum to do our due diligence, to do our research, to make sure that whenever this plan, because we're not saying that we want to impede progress. We're not saying that we're against necessarily this particular zoning. We just don't know. And the fact of the matter is, you can say you did your thing pre-COVID, but a lot of stuff that happened pre-COVID, I mean, we forgot about it. COVID was a big deal. So after COVID, when I'm looking at the timeline, I received a notice. It looks like from my letter, I received my letter on September, it was sent out September 28th or 29th for a public hearing on the 14th. Between the 14th and now, you all have had 3 or 4 different meetings. And that's fine as far as due diligence, but that is not fine if you're trying to listen to us as opposed to just hear us and do your due diligence. We're more than just a check mark. We're more than just a tick mark, a box to be checked off. We're people. Our families matter. Our community matter. You may not think that as people that may not live in our community, you may not value it as it is. You might think that you can come in and make it better. You might think, and maybe some of your ideas might add to it. But at the same time, we want to have time to do the research for ourselves to see what's best for us. And that takes time. When I look back at your timeline, there's several articles for different things that you did over years, 10 years. And you telling you can't give us 12 to 18 months to do our part? And I'm not talking about just a Google search. I'm talking about have some professional people come up with plans, things that we may not be able to come up with ourselves. I mirror it to, if you asked your children, you say, hey, what do you want for Christmas? Your children are only limited to a few areas. They're limited to what they see on TV. They're limited to what their friends have or what they've seen in a store. There's a reason why Bill Gates was building computers when everybody else was playing with dolls. Because he had access to information. We are asking for time, and we're asking for it to We're asking for it to be put on the agenda to be voted on. Now, once we do our presentation, if we haven't done a good enough job to say that we deserve that extra time, then you vote, and you vote whatever's in your heart. But we need that for us. And that's that on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to address the commission?
I'm Billy Joy Thomas, Jackson Avenue, president of Jackson Hill. I've come to several of the meetings. They had a guy that talked on form-based code for all the houses he built in Nelson. And he explained that they were all going to be rented, put on a slab. That nobody should have basements to collect clutter. And I also came to the planning department. And they made the decision that all the areas, that the 4 areas that were spoken about should be form-based code. I didn't see any representation from any of the 4 neighborhoods. So when people say that send out invitations to come to certain things, I happened to be sitting at a meeting and they showed the presentation on the screen and it was foreign to me. I had no knowledge of this. I was not invited. I didn't get an email until Friday about the meetings. It's supposed to have been, it was dated 27th of October. That's when it was. But I had no knowledge of being invited to any meeting showing that PowerPoint. Know nothing of it. And when people in the community asked me about it, I said, I have no idea. I've never seen that. Didn't know they were showing it. So I don't know how it got crossed up because they have my email. And I've been the president for Jackson Hill for a number of years. So, you know, I welcome them to bring it to the meeting and show it. Because a lot of us would like to see it because they making decisions on how they want to put stuff up in the neighborhood. And they said that they don't want to do the structure, build like the structure of our neighborhood. I think you're doing us a disservice because when you change the code, they can put some of anything up in there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to make comment before the commission before we adjourn? Vice Mayor?
I move to adjourn.
Support. Been moved by the Vice Mayor, supported by Commissioner Jordan to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Thank you. Good evening, everyone. See you tomorrow morning.